Hello, welcome to this video interview hosted by AICHE's online community, ChEnected. My name is Scott Berger. I'm the Executive Director of AICHE's Center for Chemical Process Safety. And with me today is Mr. Mike Dolan, the keynote speaker for the 2012 AICHE Spring Meeting and Global Congress on Process Safety. Mr. Dolan is the Senior Vice President of ExxonMobil Corporation. Mike, thank you for coming to speak with us today.
My pleasure.
The message that you've had about the intersection of process safety and corporate responsibility, I think, really resonated with our 2,500 attendees. As you pointed out, there have been many incidents that have occurred historically that we've been learning from, and incidents continue to occur. I think what this points out is that there's still perceived to be somewhat of a disconnect or a conflict between the process safety and the profitability of the business. And I think one of the things that happens is that in order to be successful in our industry, we have to take some risks. There's always risks involved in drilling, in refining, in manufacturing chemicals, even launching new products. But at the same time, process safety is about avoiding risks. So how do you think we can reconcile those two apparent conflicts?
Well, I think it's important to give our industry a lot of credit for the progress that has been made since 1906 or 8 when AIChE was founded. The process safety incidents were almost daily events, and fatalities were quite high. And generally, the safety record in our industry was abysmal through the 20s and 30s and even into the 40s. And if you look at where we are today, I think the process industries have done a really good job on individual safety. We've been pushing that for 20 or 30 years. People know how to work safely. They know what the hazards to them are as an individual performing the tasks that they perform. And they manage those risks pretty well. I think most of our companies are doing a pretty good job. There's always room for improvement, but with the automation we have in our plants, with the more sophisticated engineering that goes into them, people are able to work safe. What we haven't been able to do is to completely get rid of the tail of process safety risk in our operations. We've gotten rid of the lion's share of it, and we've improved these operations. They're so much more reliable than when I started. When I started, I was a shop floor engineer working on an old-fashioned console, and your job was firefighting. I mean, everything wasn't on fire, but fighting upsets all the time. So we used to joke that we're never at steady state in this process. It's always moving. And today that's not the case. Today our plants and all the process industries are much more well managed, the computer controlled, the sophisticated devices. So what we find ourselves with is a tail of process safety risk. That's very low and it goes up, but when we have an event, it results in fatalities. And of course, all injuries are unacceptable, especially fatalities. So we've kind of got the 90% right, and we're working on that last 10% in the industry, and that's hard. That's hard to do. And so, we need perhaps some new tools. We need perhaps some new views of it. Risk and reward is what business is all about. You take on certain risks. You manage those risks well. So yes, we're in a hazardous business, but it shouldn't be a risky business. We should be capable of managing the risks in a way that those risks really never present themselves, that we manage them. The hazard's always there. But if we design things with multiple barriers, and this is a point I was trying to make in my talk, what we try to do is we try to engineer, when we look at each scenario, we say, okay, what are the barriers to that happening? That fire, that release, that reaction runway, whatever it is. What are the barriers we have in place? And we want to see at least 3 of those be engineered barriers that don't require human intervention. So we've designed them in the right way, we've got the right backups, we've got the right software, all these things come into play. And then what we want as that 4th barrier is that human intervention. And so we really have spent a lot of effort in my career upskilling the workforce that we have. It's no longer, our industry is no longer a place to work just because you have a strong back and a good work ethic. You have to have a good mind, and you have to understand what you're doing. And we bring all this information to the people that run our facilities. They do a lot of the things that I used to do in the 1970s as a starting engineer. So, when you put all that together, it is possible. We have about 80 plants in our downstream and chemical business around the world. And we have some that have never had a process safety incident. And you know, we have, in our chemical business, it's been nearly 10 years since we had any fatality for any reason, mechanical or process. So we know that you can do this. You can do this with, you know, it's got to be very deliberate. It's got to be very scientifically based. It's got to be something that management puts at the top of the list, because if not, in a world of limited resources, you have to make choices. And this is a choice you have to make, number one.
And you also mentioned in your presentation about the need to improve the education of our chemical engineers and other engineers as they go through their university training. And clearly, we know how to do that. But I think one of the other challenges that we have is not just to win their minds, but also how to win their hearts. Do you have any thoughts on how we might be able to do that?
Well, I think it's you know, I think you really put your finger on, you know, the issue. There's a lot of content, and you know, we're really good at adding content to these programs. What perhaps is different today for a lot of the kids studying engineering, a lot of them get either in co-op programs or summer internships, are getting the kind of practical exposure in their, you know, within their college career that you know, my generation, we just didn't get unless you're in a co-op program. And so, you know, we have a very big internship program for kids. Most of them are juniors, some of them are sophomores. But when they come to an operating process plant, as complicated as it is, and they learn from the practicing engineers, you know, how this focus on safety is the first thing and the last thing they do every day. I think when they go back to school, they have a better, it just isn't something in a book, it's something tangible. And so I think, you know, somehow we have to expose our engineers as we're training them to the practical side. So whether that's plant visits or summer jobs or co-ops, you know, to really get them to understand and appreciate how important this is and what it really means.
To really experience it.
Because, you know, there's nothing, you know, I talk to, you know, young engineers all the time in our company, but also I do 2 or 3 university speeches a year. And I usually tell them about my experience. One of my first management jobs, managing a refinery that we had. And we had a badly engineered piece of equipment that had been engineered some years before. And some poor young tradesman was sent to clear a blockage, and this badly piece of equipment, you know, 2 or 3 things went wrong, and he lost his life. He was a young man, he was in his early 20s. His dad and his granddad had worked in the same plant. In fact, we had just retired his dad in the big ceremony. It was family. And everyone knew this kid when he used to come to the company picnics, and he was that big. And when you think about it in those terms, and you think about his mother and his sister and his brother and indeed his wife, and the impact that has, you know, it's tragic that he lost his life, but think about the impact, and then think about the impact on the whole plant was, you know, in mourning for 6 or 8 months. And of course, anything like that, people take their eyes off the ball, you know, and it can create an environment where you have another incident, or maybe it's a different kind, but some other incident. So, you know, I think there's ways that, you know, good teachers can always bring things alive to kids, and I think the more we can bring in some of the, you know, bring some of the practicing engineers back, let them tell their stories, let them talk about why this is important, you know, let them humanize it.
So all of the attendees of the conference really need to get involved in this process as well.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think there's, you know, I think it's incumbent, I was trying to make that point in our speech, you know, at the end, that there's nothing more important than the training of that next generation. That's, you know, that's our legacy. And, you know, whether we believe it or not, all of our careers are going to go by in a blink. And the legacy we leave behind is really embodied in that next generation of engineers. It's not in the steel and the wire and the cable. It's in that next generation. And that's where what you guys do at AIChE, what the companies try to do in their own outreach. But, you know, it's a share, you know, it's not just the professors and the administrators of these schools. It's a shared responsibility to make sure that we are training, you know, the best, most competitive engineers with a full tool set that they can go out and live up to the world's expectations to improve, you know, everyone's, you know, living conditions around the world, but to do it in a way that's very, very responsible, because, you know, the 24/7 news media that we live in, there's no room for error, there's no margin for error, it's not acceptable. You know, for someone like me that was in the middle of it, running the plant when it happened, it wasn't acceptable back then either to me, but the community kind of saw it as well. That happens, you know. And we just reject that. That is not what should happen. And this next generation that comes up, they need to believe that, and we need to help humanize it for them so they can see that what we do is wonderful, and it creates wonderful things for society to improve people's lives.
As we pursue the next 3 days in the conference, and people will be learning from incidents and near misses, and from conversations that they've been able to have with each other. Is there any thoughts that you'd like to, any final thoughts you'd like to leave us with to help set the stage for the rest of the conference?
Well, I would like to thank AIChE for inviting me. As you can tell, I feel very passionate about this topic. And I actually speak on it quite regularly. Usually I go to a couple of universities a year. And usually, corporate ethics and/or safety and process safety are the topics that I talk about, because, generally people, they can, you can't tell them 100 things. You can only tell them a couple of things. And I think those are the most important. And I really applaud AIChE for the focus of this meeting. I mean, you have such a big process safety focus. It really is, a great place for professionals to come together and share experience and learn new things. So I would just encourage people, have an open mind, take a lot of notes, bring this, don't just have a nice meal at Brennan's tonight and forget it. Bring it back to your workplace. If you're not doing it, figure out how you can do it. If you know how to do something better, help someone else do it. And I think that's what's magical about associations like AIChE. It's we send all of our new engineers to these type of meetings as part of their training. We have a very high training requirement, and this is one of the ones that we really like for our young engineers, to get them out, let them hear from some of the more experienced people and some other viewpoints that they may not be hearing from their work team where they are. So I wish you a good meeting. I'm very pleased to hear how many people are here. Being a record year, that means the economy really is doing better if chemical engineers have the time to come to meetings and the budget to come to meetings. It's a good leading indicator for our economy here in the United States, which is great.
It certainly is. And Mike, thank you once again so much for helping to kick off our spring meeting and Global Congress on Process Safety. Appreciate you taking the time to share your insights with us. And hopefully we'll have an opportunity to bring you back again.
Thank you. Appreciate it.